Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, hello and welcome to this week's Sunday Conversation on Big Country Politics. I am Manny Diaz. This week we are joined by DPS Trooper Sergeant Mark Couch. Sergeant Couch, it's always a pleasure to chat with you because you're just such a wealth of knowledge.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here with you today.
Yes, we are in the midst of Labor Day weekend. We're going to touch on a lot of stuff. But let's kind of get into the nitty-gritty of some things that are going on here in Abilene and the Big Country. In a press conference last week hosted by U.S. Congressman Jody Arrington, Taylor County Sheriff Ricky Bishop said the drug cartels are in Abilene. He's 100% confident in that. You know, you've been in Abilene for a little over a year now. What's been the battle like in dealing with the drug cartels and the war on drugs in this area?
Yeah, so the battle of the war on drugs is good. The cartels do have a reach into Texas. Of course, Texas DPS and all law enforcement are doing our best to try to cut those ties. But you know, we still see methamphetamine still is probably a drug of choice for this area of Texas. Has been for many years, as well as marijuana. You start to see some effects of fentanyl across the state because of what's coming in there and the dangerous things that are occurring in that situation also in the state. But you know, we hope to try to beat back the influence of drugs on our in the Big Country area as much as we can, and do our best to as law enforcement to battle against that.
You mentioned methamphetamine kind of being the drug of choice. What illegal drugs are to be found the most, in possession of the most, whenever traffic stops occur and things like that?
Yeah, so typically we're seeing everything. So we'll see methamphetamine, you'll see cocaine, you'll see marijuana is always going to be in that mix most of the time, just because of the legalization in other states and just the wide usage of it, and people are accepting the use of marijuana in so many ways that now it's not a single thing. Used to, like on a DWI traffic stop, you would get someone who was intoxicated on alcohol alone, but nowadays it's a poly-drug culture, and you're going to be dealing with not only alcohol, but there'll be something else, whether it's meth or it's cocaine or marijuana, based on the stop that you're taking. So the officer has to do a really good job on their field sobriety testing, and in a lot of cases, the reason why we'll go and get blood tests, because the breath test is really looking for alcohol alone, where the blood test is, we could screen for more narcotics and things of that nature.
Shackelford County Sheriff was mentioning the fact that, up until a few years ago, he wasn't seeing a lot of cocaine coming into his area. Now he sees a lot of that more often. With the border the way it is, are we seeing a lot more of these illegal narcotics coming across here? And are these things more relevant now?
Yeah, it's more relevant, and I think anytime that as long as we continuously have a porous border, and so much of our resources are tied up on dealing with people, which human trafficking is still a big deal. So if you would just kind of think about that as white noise all up and down the border. And so you might have an influx of maybe, say, 100 or 200 people trying to cross in an area on one side of the border. Well, what's happening is the cartel's going to be moving drugs. When law enforcement is flexing to that one point, they're moving drugs in another area across and getting them into the country, and then making their way through. So, and again, when we look at numbers, whether it's the border crossing, human trafficking, drugs, whatever, we can show you numbers of what we get and find, and that's just scratching the surface of what we're not seeing.
For the gotaways.
Exactly. The gotaways, the things you never will see and won't detect or find, because look at it through economics. The drug cartels are not losing money, and we're doing the best we can to intercept it. That's the reason why the border has to be secure. If we can lock down the choke points to where they can only cross in certain areas, then we can flex in those areas and really maximize what we do with technology and all the things that we do to make sure that we're finding and detecting as much as possible.
Speaking of securing the border, it feels like every conversation we have here, we talk more about how DPS troopers, certainly from this area of the Big Country, are being deployed to the border. How common is that now?
Yeah, it's part of our operation now. It's something, when I first started in the highway patrol, over 16 years ago, we would never travel anywhere. I mean, I went down to the first 5 years I was on the force, and when the shuttle went down, that was really the first deployment that we had outside of hurricane duties and things like that as natural disasters happen. But typically we wouldn't go anywhere, and now our troopers are traveling. Some of them are they're going down for 10 days of deployments, and then they're coming back and maybe being back for maybe 30 days before they're deployed again. Some are being deployed monthly. Some of them are maybe every other month, depending on the family and their situation and the need on the border. Sometimes they'll flex, and they really need a lot of presence down there, and it might be that you're getting deployments quite a bit. So, all of our troopers right now are very tasked with doing a lot of travel to the border, both Del Rio, El Paso from this area, and then also we also have the Austin wave that we're also doing travel there to help flex for the needs around Austin and trying to help them get their city under control.
The governor is certainly flexed and has y'all's back, and what's going on with all this. Do y'all feel like you're getting support from the federal government in that aspect?
Well, I mean, we would like to have more. Some of the things the federal government could do is take care of the border and finish the wall, do some things like that would help minimize the footprint or the flexing that the Texas Department of Public Safety has to do, as well as the Border Patrol. Border Patrol has a task that's just overwhelming for them, and most of them are not patrolling the border, they're processing people. And so even the resources that we have, people keep talking about putting 800,000 more, like taking the IRS agents that they're saying they're going to put on the force, and then you got the other side of the issue is we're going to take those and we're going to put those people on the border. Well, that's great, but until you do something about a physical barrier down there to stop the access to be able to get in, there's just too many vast areas that can be opened up, and it's just not going to be satisfied by putting people there. And again, they can't just be put there as a welcoming committee to where when people come across are like, welcome to our country and here's your slip and go into the country. There's got to be a point where we say, you're not coming in, and if you do make it to this side, we're just going to take you back.
Sergeant Mark Couch of DPS here with us on our Sunday conversation on Big Country Politics. We're going to step aside for a quick commercial break, but when we come back, we're talking Labor Day safety, certainly on these Texas highways. That and more right here on Big Country Politics.
Big Country Politics on KTAB continues.
Well, hello and welcome back to Big Country Politics. This is our Sunday conversation. Joining us this week is DPS Trooper Sergeant Mark Couch. Sergeant Couch, in the first segment, we were talking a lot about illegal narcotics and the border, securing the border, but Labor Day weekend is upon us. It's here.
Yeah, it is.
And it's always nice to have a time of relaxation, but we want to come out in one piece.
That's right.
Certainly you and DPS are tasked with making sure that we're safe on these Texas highways. Kind of give us some of the tips before we kind of get into some of the other extremes that could happen if you don't stay safe, if you don't try to minimize what you're doing that could impair some others. Yeah,
so, Labor Day is kind of our last hurrah of the summer before the, fall starts. A lot of times schools won't start till after that, but I know that where schools are in. Friday Night Football has started. The weather has got a little hint of coolness coming in the mornings and some of those things. And so this is the last time that people usually do some travel, do some partying, that kind of thing. They're kind of the last hurrah again of summer. And so we just want people to be reminded to make sure that they're designating or planning ahead before they celebrate. If you ask anyone that I might arrest on DWI or who's involved in a crash and said, hey, did you plan on this happening to you tonight? No one's going to say, oh yeah, I was going to get arrested. No. But the problem is your judgment's the first thing that leaves whenever alcohol gets introduced into your system. And so the time to make decisions about how you're going to get home and all those things are not after you've had the drinks and you're at the bar or you're at the party or someone's house. It's really before you leave. And so we want people to designate before they celebrate, make sure that you're using rideshare and all those other things that are there. Check your vehicle's condition if you're going to plan on travel across Texas. Of course, it's still hot during the day. If your tires are underflated, it could also blow or have a blowout, which could cause a crash. We want to make sure that you're using your seatbelt, that you're not distracted while you're driving. Of course, speed is still the leading factor in most crashes, and especially in fatality. And when you start stacking up things like speed and then no seatbelt, and you add DWI on top of all those things, those are the combinations, when you get those factors added into a crash, end up into a fatality.
Now, when it comes to drinking and driving, and certainly, if somebody is involved in, a fatal crash of some sort, and they're coming from, a place where they were perhaps overserved at that point, there's also consequences involved in it.
There are, and there's, you could even legally, if we go back to even contributing to someone's death, if you knew they were impaired and let them go or overserved them, especially in an establishment. I know our brothers with TABC work our bars and those kind of things, and we work with them. A lot of our DWI crashes, we can actually go back based on cell phone information and things that we can get. We can actually go back to the location where they were served, and TABC can help us go inside there, and we can get every drink that you paid for, every drink that you drank, and get the cameras and all the things that we need to make a case in regards to someone's actions involved and what they're involved in, whether they hurt somebody else or they kill someone. Could mean maybe you're facing a criminally negligent homicide case or an intoxicated manslaughter situation, depending on the case that's going out there. But really, that's kind of the end of the thing. What we want people to do is to make sure they're not getting in that situation. So if you're hosting a party, make sure you're not over-serving your guests. Maybe keep track of, maybe have a kind of a fun way to mark down how much someone has had to drink. And maybe make sure that drinking's not happening like 2 or 3 drinks in an hour. Spread that out over the evening. Make sure you're serving food. Get something in their stomach so that it lessens the level of intoxication. Maybe lessen the serving sizes that you're putting out there, and just do your part to make sure. And at the end of the day, if you know that someone's been drinking, it's better for you not to send them out at all. And so maybe use a Uber, or maybe you're going to help them get home, or make sure that their designated driver has not been consuming any alcohol before they leave your place, to make sure everyone goes home safely, so that everybody that you love in your life gets home safely, and you don't have to go to their funeral later on based on something that you did or throwing your own party.
Speaking of getting home, seat belts are apparently a big thing, and you're seeing that more and more related to fatalities. Yep. and when you're talking about crashes. Tell me about that. And certainly there's some numbers, some big statistics that are somewhat very alarming.
Well, and so a lot of people don't realize this, but all fatality crashes that occur at nighttime, is kind of surprising to see that 60% of those people in nighttime crashes are fatality crashes. If I had the guarantee that a 50% chance you would win the lottery if I gave you a set of numbers, would you not play those numbers? Mm-hmm. Well, I'm telling you right now that if you will wear your seatbelt, you have a 50% chance of surviving a crash. So
by putting
it on. I mean, with those kind of odds, why would you not wear it? It's just like playing the lottery or whatever. I've been trying to think of a campaign about, you can bet on it, the seatbelt. Bet on it. Because over 50% of the time, you're going to be correct when by having it on, it might save your life. Yeah. And so we just want to stress people to make sure they're buckling up, get those distractions out, plan ahead. Don't drive drowsy. If you pull over, get some sleep if you need to. Get off the road if you find yourself getting drowsy, those kind of things. Move over, slow down, watch for our officers out there that are working, and then certainly make sure that you're designating that celebration, planning ahead to ensure your safety, the safety of others as you're traveling. Mm.
Sergeant Couch, always good stuff.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being with us today.
So good to be with you.
Mm-hmm. Well, for Sergeant Mark Couch, I'm Manny Diaz. This has been another Sunday Conversation right here on Big Country Politics. We'll see you next week.